They called it Black Sunday. In the ruins of Pearl Harbor, America did not just lose ships, it lost faith. The entire Pacific Command structure was shattered. But in the smoke and oil slicks of December 1941, President Roosevelt had to find one man, a forgotten admiral, to inherit the most impossible command in U.S. history. The sun rose on December 8, 1941, revealing a landscape of twisted steel and unbearable loss. 7 battleships lay sunk or heavily damaged, nearly 2,400 Americans were dead, and the Pacific Fleet was crippled. The air over Oahu still smelled of burning oil and cordite. This was not merely a military defeat, it was a psychological catastrophe. In Washington, D.C., a single question hammered at the White House: who could possibly repair this disaster, and fast? The entire fate of the Pacific hung on that answer. Immediate accountability was swift and brutal. Admiral Husband Kimmel, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, was relieved of command just 10 days after the attack. The immense emotional pressure surrounding his removal left a vacuum of leadership. The Navy's high command was paralyzed, facing not just the fear of Japanese invasion on the West Coast, but the chilling realization that their entire strategic doctrine had failed. America needed a leader untainted by the wreckage, someone the Japanese would never expect. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt understood that the next leader could not be an aggressive firebrand seeking immediate, reckless revenge. That path guaranteed more loss. FDR, working closely with Navy Secretary Frank Knox, sought a leader with immense strategic depth, known for his calm, analytical mind, and crucially, his ability to manage morale. They needed a fixer who could rebuild a shattered fleet while simultaneously fighting a war. The pool of qualified, untainted admirals was dangerously shallow. The man chosen was 56-year-old Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, a Texas-born submarine specialist. At the time of the attack, Nimitz held the non-combat position of Chief of the Bureau of Navigation, essentially the Navy's personnel manager. This was a critical but distinctly administrative post, keeping him thousands of miles away from the infighting and strategic failures of Hawaii. Few outside the inner circle expected this desk admiral to be handed the single most important combat command. Roosevelt's selection was a profound gamble, rooted in a keen understanding of character. Nimitz had a reputation not just for brilliance, but for treating subordinates with respect, fostering loyalty rather than fear. FDR needed to completely restructure the command in Hawaii, and he knew a career rival appointed to the post would be devoured by bitterness and departmental warfare. Nimitz was the outsider, the diplomat, who could look beyond the ruin and see the potential for resurrection. The official orders came on December 16, 1941. Nimitz was promoted and tasked with replacing Kimmel. His new title was Commander-in-Chief, Pacific Fleet, or SINCPAC. Before departing, Secretary Knox offered a somber warning: "You will take command of nothing but oil and damaged machinery." Nimitz simply replied that he accepted the challenge. He gathered his small staff and immediately began the arduous flight across the continent and the vast, empty expanse of the Pacific. Nimitz arrived at Pearl Harbor on Christmas Day, December 25, 1941, a truly desolate holiday. The stench of diesel and decaying steel was overwhelming, the harborside still littered with wreckage. Nimitz's predecessor, Kimmel, met him dockside, his face etched with months of sleepless despair. It was a transfer of command unlike any in history, one officer handing over a fleet that, by all accounts, had ceased to exist. The burden of command settled on Nimitz immediately. One of the lesser-known facts about Nimitz's first day involved his tour of the wreckage. Instead of ranting or demanding immediate vengeance, he remained utterly silent. Standing on the deck of a salvage vessel, staring at the ghostly hulks of the Oklahoma and the Arizona, he turned to his staff and delivered his famous first directive: "The Japanese will soon know that the United States Navy, unlike the German High Seas Fleet of 1918, is not defeated." Nimitz immediately relocated his headquarters from the former naval office, a site associated with failure, to the hills of Macalapa. His focus shifted entirely from assigning blame to boosting morale and salvaging the few assets they had left. He insisted on the necessity of repairing ships in Pearl Harbor itself. Crucially, the massive dry docks were still functional, a miracle of survival. Had the Japanese destroyed them, U.S. repair time would have been delayed by 6 months. Nimitz's command style was radically different from his predecessors. He delegated widely, trusting talented, though perhaps younger, subordinates like Raymond Spruance and Frank Jack Fletcher. He empowered them to use their judgment, allowing the few remaining aircraft carriers, the Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga, to operate independently, striking fast and vanishing before the Japanese could track them. This unpredictable hit-and-run strategy kept the Japanese off balance. The situation was desperate. Nimitz controlled only 3 working carriers, while the Japanese possessed 10, with 6 battle-hardened veterans in the attacking Keto-Butai fleet. Every decision was existential. Nimitz understood that the war in the Pacific would be won or lost based on intelligence and the ability to project air power. He threw his full support behind the fledgling code-breaking efforts at Station Hypo, led by Commander Joseph Rockefort. This support paid off dramatically. In May 1942, Rockefort's team decoded messages indicating a massive Japanese offensive aimed at an objective codenamed AF. Nimitz trusted his intelligence officer, despite skepticism from Washington, and correctly identified AF as Midway Atoll. This was the turning point. Suddenly, the crippled American fleet had the priceless advantage of knowing precisely when and where the Japanese would strike next. Nimitz now faced his ultimate test. With the odds stacked against him, he prepared an elaborate ambush near Midway. He resisted the urge to commit all his ships, instead deploying his few carriers under Spruance and Fletcher to wait silently beyond the enemy's scouting range. His calm demeanor masked the harrowing tension. He knew that one mistake would erase the entire American naval presence in the Pacific for years. In the first week of June 1942, the Battle of Midway changed the war forever. Thanks to Nimitz's faith in intelligence and his subordinates' bravery, for Japanese carriers, the core of their striking power were sunk in a single, devastating blow. The loss was irreparable for Japan. The decision made 6 months earlier in the Oval Office, the quiet appointment of the desk admiral, had just been validated on a global scale. Chester W. Nimitz went on to command the Pacific Fleet until the final victory in 1945, accepting Japan's surrender aboard the USS Missouri. He was the admiral Roosevelt had chosen not because he was the most celebrated, but because he possessed the quiet resilience necessary to rebuild hope from despair. Nimitz healed the wounds of Pearl Harbor, not with aggression, but with patience, brilliant strategy, and the profound, dignified courage of the unexpected leader.